From Cinderella to Little Mermaid, I'm sure we've all experienced the joys of watching Disney movies growing up, and many of us probably have quite a few favorites. I mean, who doesn't love watching their favorite hero save the day, right? However, the original accounts from which they are inspired tell a far darker tale. Please be advised that much of what we're about to share may just ruin your childhood. Number 10. Mulan. In the Disney story of Mulan, we follow the journey of a girl, her cricket, and her mythical dragon Mushu as they devise a plan to protect her ailing father from his requirement to join the Chinese army and fight against the invading Huns. Mulan fools everyone when she successfully disguises herself as a man, joins the army, and leads them into victory. The story of Mulan dates back to the 11th or 12th century collections of poems named the Ballad of Mulan, in which China actually loses the war and Mulan is captured by the Huns, who agree to let her live only if she marries their king. Fortunately for Mulan, she escapes and returns home. However, when she arrives, she discovers her father has died and her mother is remarried. Struck by grief, our heroine kills herself with her father's sword after uttering, "I am a woman. I survived the war and I have done enough. Now I want to be with my father." Talk about a daughter's love. Number 9. Pinocchio. This tale begins with an old puppeteer who creates a wooden marionette named Pinocchio. The puppeteer's only wish is to have his marionette become a real boy, so that he may have a son. As in most fairy tales, of course, a magical fairy appears and grants his one wish. Well, sort of. We should all be familiar with the way the rest of this story plays out, especially since it's been around since the 1940s. So we'll just cut to the chase here. The original account, written by Carlo Collodi, is pretty horrible and portrays Pinocchio as a mischievous child who steals things and behaves so badly that even his father calls him a wretched lad. I'm sure at this point you're probably questioning where Jiminy Cricket fits in. I mean, he is the boy's conscience after all. Well, while he does exist in Collodi's telling tale, his outcome is a more tragic one. You see, Pinocchio gets tired of dealing with poor Jiminy, so he takes a mallet to the cricket and kills him. Much to Pinocchio's surprise though, this does not get rid of good old Jiminy, for his spirit haunts Pinocchio as he tries to assist him in proving his worth so he can become a real boy. Sadly, one day, Pinocchio comes across an odd couple, a fox and a cat, who then steal all of his money and take his life by hanging him from a willow tree. Number 8. Cinderella. With fairy godmothers, pumpkin carriages, and a beautiful ball, I'm sure everyone has heard of this timeless classic, Cinderella. Disney's version did a fairly good job of sticking to the popular version of the story, written by the French author Charles Perrault in 1697. However, his story takes a much darker twist when the prince reaches Cinderella's home with the glass slipper. When the stepsisters try on the glass slipper, it doesn't fit, so one of them cuts off her toes. And if this isn't disgusting enough, the other sister cuts off her heel. Cinderella then tries on the blood-filled shoe in order to prove she is the girl that he met at the ball. Pretty brutal. As the prince rides off with Cinderella into the sunset, two birds swoop down and peck out the stepsister's eyes. However, I will always question, how was this guy not able to remember the woman of his dreams? Was it really necessary to make sure the shoe fit? Number 7. The Jungle Book. Released back in 1967 and then re-released as an action film in 2016, The Jungle Book tells a story of a young boy named Mowgli who was raised by wolves in the wild. That is, until Shere Khan finds out. Disney tells us the boy travels with a panther, defeats Shere Khan, and makes his way back to a nearby village to live happily ever after. Lies. All lies. This fable tells a much different tale. While Mowgli was still raised by the wolves and does escape the death from the evil Shere Khan, when he returns to the village, many of the villagers accuse him of practicing witchcraft and threaten to burn down the forest he grew up in. Mowgli, of course, couldn't let this happen, so he gathers up an animal army to attack the village. Together with an army of elephants and wolves, he destroys the villagers' crops, their homes, and sends them fleeing for their safety. And when asked what he was going to do after demolishing an entire village, he replied, "I'm going to Disneyland." Just kidding. He rides off into the sunset and lives happily ever after. Number 6. Aladdin and the King of Thieves. Now here's a narrative that's pretty familiar, as it tells the typical rags-to-riches story of a young, poor street merchant who goes on to be a hero and win over the heart of a beautiful princess. In the sequel, where we are introduced to Qasim, Aladdin's father, who just so happens to be the king of the gang of 40 thieves. Disney tells the tale of Qasim changing his ways in order to attend his son's wedding. However, in Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, this is not the case. In Antoine Galland's 18th century Arabian Nights, Qasim is not really Aladdin's father, but instead his brother, who gets caught one day stealing gold from a merchant. Upon being captured, he is killed and dismembered, with pieces of his body left out as a warning to other thieves. Aladdin finds out about what happened and asks a peasant girl to sew his brother back together so that it looks like he died of natural causes. Once the gang of 40 thieves discovers their king is dead, they turn on Aladdin, who wins, stabs them all, and boils them. Number 5. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? In this dark tale, told by the brothers Grimm, the evil queen's stepmother asks a huntsman to kill Snow White so she could be the fairest maiden in the land. After failing to kill Snow White, the huntsman decides to take the lungs and liver of a pig to convince the evil queen Snow White is dead. The queen then dines on what she believes is the princess's organs, but becomes outraged when she realizes Snow White is, in fact, still alive. The evil queen is infuriated and decides to go after Snow White herself, but this time with a poison apple. When the prince finds out about her death, he demands to take her coffin back to the kingdom with him. I guess that road was pretty bumpy though, because it ends up dislodging the apple from Snow White's throat and she awakens. In traditional Brothers Grimm fashion, there is a darker ending for the evil queen. At their wedding, the prince forces her to dance in iron shoes over red-hot coals, until she dies. After trying to kill Snow White, this seems pretty fair, right? Maybe? I'll let you decide on that one. Let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button. Number 4. The Fox and the Hound. The Fox and the Hound is loosely based on the 1967 novel written by Daniel P. Mannix and tells the tale of a fox being raised by a hunter and his dogs before the fox is returned to the wild. In the Mannix version, Todd, the fox, returns to visit the hunter who raised him, only to taunt Chief, the eldest dog, despite pleas to the contrary from his best friend Copper. A bit different from the version I grew up on, but this doesn't seem so bad, right? Or does it? You see, Chief gets loose one day and chases Todd to a train track where Chief is actually hit by a train. Chief's master then swears vengeance for his dog's death and becomes obsessed with catching Todd. The master then begins stabbing, gassing, and tormenting Todd's wives and children while Copper relentlessly continues to chase the fox, who eventually dies from exhaustion. Now you would expect the story to end here with everyone else living happily ever after, but not this time. Every character dies. After Todd's death, the master turns to drinking to drown his sorrows and eventually shoots and kills Copper. Number 3. Hercules. The Disney story tells us an adventurous tale of Hercules, the young son of Zeus, who goes on a mission to become a hero so that he can join his family on Mount Olympus with the other gods. On his mission, he of course rescues Megara, a damsel in distress, from Hades, saving the day and making him a hero. The two of course fall in love and live happily ever after. So let's start with something both stories have in common: Megara. Hercules does marry her, however, not in the way Disney tells it. He, in fact, forces her into marriage, and despite their odd arrangement, the two have 2 children together. In the years that followed, Hera, Zeus's wife, decides to drive Hercules mad, which leads him to killing his beloved wife and children. Only after he was tormented by guilt does he then complete the 12 tasks as the Disney story portrays, except he does so with extreme violence and total disregard for life. Yet he still manages to make it to Mount Olympus. Not so sure my childhood hero was much of a hero after all. Number 2. Tangled. We've all heard the tale of a beautiful princess locked away in a tower. She lets down her golden hair so that her prince can climb up and rescue her, and they live happily ever after. The truth is, Rapunzel was not even a princess at all, but the daughter of a peasant couple who gave her to an evil enchantress in exchange for a plant that her pregnant mother longed for. Must be a good plant. The evil enchantress becomes outraged when she discovers Rapunzel has been sneaking a prince into her tower at night and drags Rapunzel into the desert to live her life in misery. She then tricks the prince into the tower where she casts a spell, sending him leaping out from the tower window into a rose bush below, whose thorns of course pierce his eyes, leaving him blind. Crazy enough, after a few years the two lovebirds find each other again and Rapunzel cures her prince's blindness with her tears. Personally, I think this is the happiest ending I've ever heard of in a Brothers Grimm tale. Number 1. The Little Mermaid. You dream about going up there, but that is a big mistake. Perhaps Ariel should have taken some advice from Sebastian on this one. While the 1989 Disney telling of The Little Mermaid had some catchy tunes, a memorable villain, and the classic Disney happy ending, it is a far cry from its original, darker, and more depressing tale. Hans Christian Andersen's 1837 story of The Little Mermaid is by far one of the most gruesome children's stories ever written. While much of the original story and the cartoon line up, there are some very unexpected twists. Let's start with Ariel getting her human legs from the sea witch Ursula. Apparently, walking for Ariel wasn't easy. In fact, Andersen describes it as though knives, yes, knives, were being stabbed through the soles of her feet with every step. To make matters worse, the prince winds up marrying another woman and never even discovers that the mysterious woman who saved him from drowning was Ariel. This throws our heroine into a state of depression. The story only gets darker from here. You see, the sea witch notices how miserable Ariel is and offers to help her by giving her back her tail if she stabs the prince in the heart and lets his blood drip on her feet. Unfortunately, Ariel is so grief-stricken that she cannot bear to kill the prince and instead takes her own life. Anyway, tell us what you think about these dark tales and we'll see you next time.